Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, my wife and I watched Don't Look Up. Was that what it was? From Netflix last night. And so many people recommended it to me, and people wanted to hear my opinion of it. I guess it's a big thing in the truth community. Also, we watched the last episode of Succession, which is quite an accomplishment for us because there's often naps going on. And so, we don't get through various things. But we were watching that show Succession over numerous days, season 3. We had watched seasons 1 and 2 before. And it is a masterfully made show. The acting, the character development, the dialogue. I mean, it paints such a brutal picture of, the trillionaire, billionaire club, right? Often when you see movies on royalty, like something like Downton Abbey or, whatever the Crown, these types of things. I mean, the Crown was a little bit better. But they paint these elitists as good people, right? They paint them, as just really, regular people who just have a lot of money and have issues with the money, but, they want to do good things and they have, good qualities. In Succession, there's none of that. Like, these are just mean-spirited family, these unhappy, miserable, ultra-wealthy people in a family who just snipe at each other and just, lie and if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. It's very gross. I mean, it's, it doesn't do, like, there's nothing good about any of the characters. Like, there's nothing redeeming. They're just so self-centered and, the way they treat other people and their loved ones, they're all got thin skin. They're all venomous creatures. And so it's hard on a spiritual level, very gross to watch. It's not uplifting, but it is a well-made show. And then to segue into this other Don't Look Up, which had a star-studded cast, like lots of Hollywood big names in there and even Hollywood cameos. And it does take shots at the truth community. I mean, there's open shots at the truth community, especially the right-wing truth community. And there's a lot of sort of predictive programming, Illuminati stuff. And I'm not going to cover that. I could go back and pull those things, but they're not essential to my opinion on it. And I'm going to get into that because I can, get over a lot of woke stuff in there. I'll talk about that in a moment. But there's multiple times where they're holding up devil's horns, and I showed some clips of a trailer. I talked about that, right? And so what the movie's about, if you haven't seen it, this isn't going to be much of a spoiler alert. I'm going to talk about, just an overview of the movie. But there's also a scene where there's like a Bill Gates / Steve Jobs character, but he's really old. And he mentions the 2 Freemasonic pillars and then walking between them of Boaz and Joaquin. And so that happens. There's lots of Illuminati stuff in there. They demonize the right more than the left, but they're pretty hard on pretty much everybody. The media they take shots at because there is this impending disaster, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio as sort of the main character. And he is so big into climate change that this is clearly a metaphor for climate change, and that there's this comet that's going to hit America and the world, right? It's going to hit the world. And the president wasn't want to deal with it because, the president's played by Meryl Streep, and it's going to hurt her midterm elections. And, with all this politicized, and they go on this, TV show, and they try to, some sort of like morning TV show, and, like Good Morning America, where they're over the top positive and they don't want to hear the bad news. So it's just something where there's a level of denial, like there's denial for climate change. And the thing gets politicized as it moves forward. This is where they sort of take a shot at the truth community and sort of the right-wing people where they, everyone can see the comment. And so they say, just look up becomes a trending hashtag. But then the right-wing, truthers and the president say, don't look up, right? That, it's just some disinformation and you're being deceived by the lefties and don't look up. And so there's this battle. So all of it's, there's a lot of woke stuff. I mean, for Netflix, I would say maybe it's a 3-star movie. I don't know, 2.5, which is pretty good for Netflix. There are some funny jokes, and there is some kind of true stuff to it. Not truther stuff, but true stuff. The true stuff is how lame human beings are and how they're not worth saving across the board. I mean, there is enough criticism, and they're certainly harder on the right wing and truthers and the idea of truth community, and they're pretty pro-science, right? Like they make the scientists are the ones sort of true heroes in the movie, and the scientists are getting it right. There's some element of praying at the end of the movie. This is going to be the spoiler alert part, right? So there's some level of religion and science where the scientists are with some religious kid and they're praying. So there's some of that, which I guess is maybe positive. But at the end of the movie, right before the comet hits and wipes out all life on planet Earth, which could have been avoided, a couple of different things that could have been done to avoid it, but because of human beings sucking, they don't. And Leonardo DiCaprio says, we really did have it all, right? We had a good life. We had all these things, and now it's gone. And that sort of misses the point because it's our lifestyle that's causing us to suck, right? It's our, deceptive system, the debt-based economic system, the focus on materiality, right? Where even, religion and science have both been corrupted by money and power, but mostly money, and money's a power in itself. Because with enough power and money and any other type of incentives, you can get a scientist to fudge their science, and you can get a religion to change its, to warp its teachings and manipulate its followers. And that happens all the time. It's happened in both the religion of science and in all these religions. And so people are corrupt on every level, and, the moral degradation, the weakness. So it isn't that we had this great lifestyle and, for Leonardo DiCaprio, we let it go because of climate change. It's that we're going in the wrong direction. We're disconnected from God, and we're becoming weaker and more pathetic. And even the Leonardo DiCaprio character is on so many different medications and has anxiety and, psychological medications. I mean, none of them, are painted in a way that they're highly functioning. There's no highly functioning people in the movie. It's not nearly as good as, say, Succession in terms of its character development and, just like hardcore kind of ugly truth. And again, it comes from the woke perspective. All stuff on Netflix are going to have that, like all movies and TV shows. I mean, the wokeness that you see, like you watch anything in the Marvel universe now, the wokeness is so prevalent and so contrived and so ridiculous, right? Because the woke stuff is just wrong. Like, it's just wrong. I mean, there's stuff that's right about the wokeness, like the woke stuff that has to do with oppression. Yeah, you have various groups that based in racial or ethnic or religious, whatever it is, receive prejudice. Like there's powerful groups of people. One demographic gets into power, and they reward other people in their demographic, and they don't reward, they oppress and enslave other people in other demographics. Like that's true. Like that happens. And so this idea that in the woke community that happens, sure, that happens, right? But their solutions and, just a lot of their understanding of this phenomenon is so off, and they themselves suck as people. Like most woke people are just like the worst people. Like, the ones that are out there at least. And they're trying to cancel other people and they suck themselves. So there's the hypocrisy level. But the big thing about the woke culture, if you're fighting against the power, right? If you're fighting against, I guess in this sense, white power, that's what the woke culture is mostly fighting against, then why has Hollywood and why is the whole Democratic Party and all of social media giants, and in sports as well, backing you, right? If you're really talking truth to the man, why are you being supported by the powers that be, right? Woke culture is integrated into Hollywood. It's integrated into sports. It's integrated into social media. So many of the community guidelines are about, going against protected groups in the woke ideology, and the party that's in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House are all, into the woke agenda for the most part. So you got to understand this. If the powers that be are backing you and you're saying that you're fighting the power, no, the power is actually supporting your agenda or whatever it is. So there must be something off about it, right? If the power is evil, the people in power are evil, and that's what you're thinking, like people in the truth community. But people in the truth community are being suppressed and being, censored and things like this. So they're truly fighting power. When the power is pushing against you, but also using you to impose restrictions and things like freedom of speech or whatever it might be, then, it's all just a mess, right? But if the powers that be are supporting you, then you're in line with their agenda. And that's what woke culture is. But anyways, it's saturated with woke culture. But going back to my central point, when Leonardo DiCaprio says at the end of the movie that, we had it all, we didn't have it all. Like, he's miserable. He's on all these different medications. He ditches his wife for, some news reporting. I mean, just the whole thing, right? It's a mess. His life is a mess. There's no redeeming characters. So he didn't have it all. Like, it's not a good system. And that's the problem. That's the problem that all these, it's the problem with the truth community, people trying to save the system. It's a problem with the woke people and, the so-called scientists and all these people out there. They're saying they're trying to save the system, that our system's under threat. Joe Biden saying we're fighting for the soul of America, all these things. No, none of those things are true. The system is hurting all of us, taking us all in the wrong direction, and it's going to collapse because all systems collapse. It's inevitable. All around the world, there are ruins. There's archaeological ruins and discoveries of, ancient civilizations that were maybe even superior to the ones we have, right? The pyramids, we couldn't even rebuild the pyramids. We have no idea of how they built the pyramids so efficiently, how they moved the rocks, how they cut, all these things. And so there's all these ways that there are ancient civilizations that were, at least as developed as ours, and many that it seems had far better technological development than what we have. The things like computer chips and things like that will break down after 10,000 years. And so according to the heartfulness system, there were technologically advanced races of people that were so much more advanced than we are that no longer are here on planet Earth, at least not, living here, that occupied this planet. And they're gone now. Like, there's planets that used to inhabit, there was, life on other planets, that those planets are now lifeless, that don't even exist. There are suns, right? There are stars that we're receiving light from, and they don't exist anymore. They are destroyed. Our sun will go at some point. There'll be no life here. This whole planet will be destroyed, right? Everything changes. Everything dies, right? There'll be a time where our planet's no longer inhabitable by, what we consider terrestrial life, but spirit life, sure. There'll be spirit life there, etheric life that can exist without oxygen, whatever it is. And so all these things are going to come to an end, and our civilization is going to come to an end. I mean, sooner than later. It's one of the bad ones. Anything that goes against the divine will ends up collapsing sooner than later. And so the movie, it's okay, I guess, in one way or another. I mean, you put away all the Illuminati symbolism and the devil horns and the woke agenda and the things. There is a somewhat accurate portrayal of the state of humanity, right? It's warped a little bit, a little bit more critical to truthers in the right, whatever. I just don't, none of that stuff matters. See, that's just yesterday's news. Like, I used to make a lot of videos about predictive programming. Every once in a while I do a video about that. And you see it, right? There's stuff out there. Like, so many people were, Omnicron and saying how it's a anagram for moron. Yeah, okay, but it's a letter in the Greek alphabet, and, it is whatever it is. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. Doesn't really matter, because we're in the, next phase, right? Like, we were, the plan was being developed, but now the plan is really being activated. And it's going to be even more so as we move forward. And so it's no longer important that they said, oh, look, look, we discovered that they actually are predictive program this. So there's, something in The Simpsons that shows this is a plan. Like, the plan is there for everyone to see. Either you see it or not, right? Their agenda, they're not hiding their agenda. They're not hiding what they're doing. They're pushing it through. They don't care whether you like it or not. I mean, the switch happened really in 2015 and 16, where they started to push things that the American people didn't like, and they were like, we don't care, right? We don't care whether you like it or not. And that was a big change from the customer's always right, where they were always pandering to the people, and now they're not pandering anymore. They're just forcing things on you, only to the extent that they don't want you to flip out completely. So they can't force it all at once, but they're definitely not considering, they know you don't like it, right? And not just you in the truth community, everyone doesn't like a lot of the changes, and your lifestyle is going to suffer. And there's no way to sell that to you because you think you're entitled to it. I mean, not you personally, all of us. We all think we're entitled to this lifestyle because they've promised it to us, and they've promised that it's just going to get better and better. You're going to get more comforts. You're going to get more, technological advancements. Your life's just going to get better and better. And now they're going to say, no, it's going to get worse. Home ownership, gone. Driving a car, gone, right? Having electricity the way you've had it, having a big house, where you can, spread out and things, gone. Like, you're going to have tiny Agenda 21 houses packed in cities. You're not going to own land, right? You're not going to have nearly as many choices, and they're going to monitor the crap out of you, and there's going to be so much pressure. I mean, that's their plan. It's not going to happen because there's going to be, upheavals that stop them from moving forward with this because they're losing control, right? But that's their plan, and their plan is now being activated. They're pushing their plan, and you can see it. So, like, whether they predictive programmed it into a movie 20 years ago doesn't really matter as much as it did 5 years ago, or even, a couple years ago. They're now pushing their agenda, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it, right? Like, this movie is supposed to be like, oh, if you watch it, you're supposed to see the metaphor for global warming, but no right-wing people and, no, I mean, it's just, who's it going to change? Like, how is it going to affect anybody, right? Like, people think that they're going to change somebody's opinion, and it never happens, right? How many times do you have an argument on the internet and you change the person's opinion or they change yours? Like, it doesn't work. Like, stop doing it, right? Like, stop trolling. You're not, you're just preaching to the choir. People's belief systems are so rigid now. I covered this on another video on my other channel, Apocalaughsnow. They're constantly changing the story and rearranging the story, and, I mean, that's what they do. For me, I mean, I talked about this a little bit in maybe the video here yesterday, and then a little bit on my video today on the other channel about how difficult it is to tell the truth. The whole system is like forcing people to lie, right? The whole system in terms of the institutions and all your training and the dogma and even people in your personal life, and then people's perceptions, right? People's beliefs. People are so rigid about their beliefs and so locked in, and these other people are the enemy. And when anybody gets new information, gets information about something important to them, they rearrange the facts to fit their internal beliefs and their emotions and their personal lens. And it's very prevalent in the truth community, where everyone wants to blame what I call the controllers and say that they're more powerful than they actually are. I say this over and over again, right? They're human beings with the same kind of problems that everyone else has, and they suffer the same kind of disappointments and loss of control. They can't stop themselves from dying. They can't make everything, all their plans, all their ambitions come to life. Money and power by influence over the beast, the system, but there's other people with money and power, and then there's the beast itself. It goes in its own direction, and then there's God's will. When your system is strong or it's new, there's still a lot of hope. There's still a lot of possibility for change before the system becomes a rigid dinosaur on its way to extinction. And that's where we are now. And so when the system is young, yeah, of course, when it's not going to collapse in the foreseeable future, it's a different time, right? It's just like a person. When it's a newborn baby, all it has is possibility. Of course, it has some scaras, it's some scaric load, these impressions from past lives, past experiences on a spiritual level, things it has to endure. Maybe it's got some scar for addiction or anger or depression or any of these things, right? Suicide, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, those things are waiting for it. But when it's a newborn baby, it's just all possibility and potential. And then, starts learning things, start developing a personality, still all kinds of potential through its toddler years and being a kid. But by the time it's a teenager, it's starting to form its personality. But it can still change, right? The kid can still change and will change, right? New things will emerge. Things inside of the child will emerge, some of them good, some of them bad, tendencies that get pulled out as they enter new phases of their life into their 20s, 30s, whatever it is, having kids, careers and things like this. But now they're pretty locked into place. Again, they're 50s and 60s and 70s, and it's almost impossible to change. The person's on some sort of trajectory, some path, and they've pretty much don't have much life force left to do any sort of radical changes. And then as they get into their older years, they just don't have the strength and the, cognitive abilities anymore to do any sort of, real changes, right? And our system's like a person in their 70s or 80s. So there's not any change in it, right? And, these people that I call the controllers, yeah, they've done a lot of bad things and they, go against the will of God, but they have also been used by the divine powers to oversee this world, connecting the world. That was done through these people. They're not great people, but they brought the world together. Maybe, their ambition was something corrupt, but the end product is a world that's connected through plane travel and through, boats and the internets and all these things. And this was all part of God's plan, regardless of the evil they done and whatever, piece of the pie they've taken for their work. Still, this was a part of the plan. And now they're being used to take the system down. If you look at just what they're doing, you say, wow, they're evil and they're, destroying our system. But if you look at the system itself and you say, hey, this system is debauched, right? It's not salvageable. It's completely corrupt and it's, backwards and demonic. Then they're taking down a system that, we're all 100% dependent on, but it's not good for any of us. And you're going to go through the 5 stages of grief. I mean, whatever. I don't know if that's even a real thing, but it's kind of a good model, right? Denial and bargaining, all these ways of saying, well, the system can't go because you're 100% dependent on it, just like when you're going to die, right? I mean, I have, both of those things more prevalent than most of you. I'm in my 50s, right? I got, 20, 30 more years left. And those years are going to be, not as good in terms of my physical health, right? In terms of my potential workload, in terms of my functioning capacity, in terms of, all the health issues you get as you get older. A person, crosses through their 40s and into their 50s and 60s and 70s, they're more and more facing their mortality. And then there's the system itself, right? And then you eventually get to, you go through anger and, these other phases, emotional phases, and then you get to, finally you get to acceptance. And then beyond that, which isn't in the 5 stages of grief, is gratitude, where you're grateful for this experience. You see it's necessary that the system collapses. It's necessary for your life to end at some point when it's, the right time for it to end, right? When you've accomplished your task and you've done what your soul sent you down here to do. You've done, God's work and things like this. And so you move forward to something else, right? You leave your body and then you go on your next, spiritual adventure. And so, when people talk about the end of the world or, the end of the world and the end of your life, there's not much difference for you personally, right? Like, yeah, I guess you could reincarnate, but you're dying or everybody dying. You personally, it really doesn't matter, right? Once you leave this planet, you leave your body, you have to go through that. If it's a extinction level event or it's just something you personally are going through, you and, what other, people around the world that are also dying that day or that moment, I mean, it's all the same thing. It's because this is all that we know, whether it's the end of our life or the end of the planet. This is what we know, right? This is, what we understand. This is what we're conscious of. We don't have, we're not in contact with the spirit world and where our soul's going to go. I mean, people who aren't, doing something like the heartfulness meditation, which connects you with the, the etheric worlds and where your soul resides when it isn't in a body, which helps you transition to, where you're going to go when you leave this planet, right? But anyways, right, it's all that we know. Like in terms of our conscious memory and, there's fear of the unknown and all these things. And so going back to this movie, and, again, it was an okay movie, but there was a period of time where the main characters who were freaked out when they found the comet, and then, those characters that were able to accept their fate, then they could use that time, whatever time it was between discovering the comet and when they, accepted it, going through the phases of, what inevitably was going to happen. And you want to get to the phase where you're like, all right, I'm grateful for this experience, and whatever time left I have on this planet, I'm going to use it to my, best spiritual advantage. I'm going to do what I can to promote my soul's forward movement towards the, divine goal that we all have to return to the source, but also enjoy your time. Do you want to bicker with people? You want to be angry? You want to be hatred? You want to be filled with hatred and finger pointing and be obsessed with, some nefarious villains that that you have in your conscious, and the controllers and all these people, Biden or Trump or Fauci or whatever it is, right? People have their, people that they hate. Or you want to spend your time with your loved ones, enjoying what time you have left, this beautiful planet, and, whatever great experiences that you can have, being positive, right? Because time is limited. And when you're young, you just don't understand that, right? As you get older, like all of a sudden you have, like, I don't know, some sort of malignant, something, some kind of cancerous thing. Maybe it's not real cancer, but it's, a malignant growth on your skin, something, whatever, some polyps here or there, some kind of, and all of a sudden you have, like some experience with a disease or whatever, and you're not, everything's not working as well. You have some, minor heart attack or strokes and things like this, and you realize, your body's starting to fail, right? Like everyone goes through that. You get into your 40s and, you have something, right? You have some kind of, ways that your body says, hey, I'm not running the way I used to when I was young, and then there's more and more of that waiting for you. And you realize your time is limited. And time starts passing really quickly as you get older. I mean, it just does. I don't know why it is. But the years go faster and faster. And at some point you realize you wasted most of your frickin' time, right? And so, this is something for everyone to think about. Like, it's just coming through in this video, but most people are just wasting their time. You have an opportunity here, and, figure out what that opportunity is and make the most of it. And just don't get caught in this petty little stuff that doesn't add up to nothing. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano. Definitely a point from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.